headband a permanent feature now, Perry? Is that something that
maybe I might just go all caveman?
It's a bit Jack Grealish.
Yeah.
Hello, everybody. We are actually live on Facebook now.
Sorry,
Yeah, welcome to our Agents Here to Help with Jane and Mal. And we have some amazing guests this week. Not Carla. We can actually see her little box with her name in still. I don't think she wants to be seen. So let me introduce everybody. And I won't say which order we're in because my screen is very different to everybody else's. So I think we've learnt that every week. We have Terry Power from Power Bespoke in Reigate, who does everything. Sales, lettings, auctions, new homes. And then obviously my lovely co-host Mal, who you all know. Then we've got Steve Payne from Benjamin Stevens, who are in Edgware and Bushy, I believe. That's right, Stephen?
Yeah, Luton, most of London we cover now.
Most of London, and again, covering pretty much everything. And then last but not least, we have Chris Baker from McDowalls, who are in Stratford, and again, do everything and wear lots of hats, I believe.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you very much for joining us today, and I'm going to hand you over to Mel to explain what we're going to be talking about for you guys out there who are thinking about being in the property market. Over to you, Mel.
Yeah, nice one. Well, thanks, Jane. So yeah, look, as every week, we're here to kind of help you, the consumer, to understand a bit more about this, what they always call new normal, what is actually really going on in the property market. There has been a couple of wildly different reports out this week. One from Rightmove saying that it's all gung-ho and there's been this massive property bounce. And then you've got the HMRC report saying that it's down 31.5% transactions in June compared to last year, but it's still up 50% in May. So the BBC headline is a slump. So I just wanted to find out from the guys on the panel today, really what's happening on the ground, what you as a consumer, buyer, seller, tenant or landlord, what you should be really doing in this market. So I'm going to start with you, Steve. So what's hi there, good to see you. How are things working out for you in that area, and what would you say is the reality?
It's been really busy out there. You know, we came back. I came back with me and one other person on the 13th of May when we were allowed to work. We didn't really open our doors till the 1st of June, but it's been consistently busy. Like June was crazy for us. Right. The beginning of the year was absolutely mad, and June just seemed to carry on. And already so far in July, and we've still got another 10 days or so, we've eclipsed what we did in June. There's a lot going on. There's a lot of people buying and a lot of activity out there.
Do you think that's because of the sort of pent-up frustration, or do you think that it's actually more than that? Do you think people, want
I think there was a frustration in January and February. I think people waited for Brexit to sort itself out. Then there was the election people waited for. And then 2020 was everyone's year that they were going to finally move and just get on with it. And then, this all happened. And I think then you got a whole new group of people who actually realised they didn't love their wife as much as they thought. We got, there's a lot of divorces and a lot of separations going on. There's been a lot of people who've actually missed having a garden and have thought, that's why I want to move. There's a lot of reasons out there at the moment why people want to move. And you sort of put that all together with what had happened before and that demand. And that's sort of where we are at the moment. It's been really, really busy. On the letting side, it's also been busy, but it's been more quality. It's not the hundreds of viewings we're getting on sales. There's lots of deals being done, but obviously a lot of people are worried about their jobs, and that type of person who maybe been a renter, someone who worked in a restaurant or worked in a bar, or the uni students who aren't quite sure if they're going to go back to uni, there's obviously been a little bit of a slight adjustment in prices on lettings. Obviously, July, August is normally one of the busiest times of the year, especially in London, because you've got all the overseas students. Obviously, they're not coming over at the moment, and if they are, they're just a little bit hesitant. So that side's busy, but the prices of, on all of it, the prices have not gone wild. It's just the activity, and I think people are quite aware of what they should be paying, and people who used to say, oh, well, we'll put it on at 500, let's try 530, they're not getting anywhere. But people, I think Perry does what I do as well, where we go do offers in excess and we try and market the property upwards, we negotiate upwards. That's working really well, and we're getting, some really good interest and some really good stock.
Okay, good. Perry, is that your kind of experience as well down there, in Reigate? Are you seeing yourself as busy as before, so January, or as busy as June last year? What does it look like in comparison to that?
So I think exactly what Steve said. We're like on the commuter belt for London, so there's probably a bit of extra demand. Maybe some people now looking to move out of London a bit more potentially. We've seen a little uprise in that. But two things, totally agree with what Steve said. I think the market's like a wound up elastic band, is how I've kind of been saying it to quite a few clients. Not sure how long that will go on for. Let's hope for everybody's benefit a long time. You've got to remember that any market is relative when you're buying or selling, so making sure that doesn't really matter, particularly unless you're upsizing to be kind of moving in a upward market is kind of sooner the better. But I think the stamp duty holiday wasn't, in my opinion, wasn't particularly needed because, as Steve said, there was a lot of demand January, February time anyway. That's caused a bit more supply to come on the market. So we've put probably at least 5 houses on the market where it is solely because stamp duty. You know, let's upsize now and save a few quid on stamp duty while it's there.
Right.
But it hasn't really fed through to the banks yet, as Steve was saying, pricing's still really, really crucial. Lenders, that stamp duty break doesn't really appease or make lenders feel any more relaxed about the future outlook of the property market. And we've had a few down valuations as well. So we might be achieving great prices from great buyers, but the bank's coming in and disagreeing with the price they're paying or down valuing it. So just got to take a real overview of the whole thing, really.
Got it. And Chris, have you seen a similar thing over in East London?
Yeah, it's interesting what Perry said actually about the down valuation side, because we undertake valuation work for various clients, and we're finding that because our East London is generally the more affordable area of London, you find that stamp duty 500,000 is very helpful for the typical 1 and 2 bedroom flats. When it starts hitting the higher price things, it becomes less attractive. But we are still finding in East London perhaps an oversupply of 2 bedroom flats. We find lots and lots of developments providing those. So they're quite easy to actually find that they get down valued a little bit more by the mortgage valuers than some of the other different types that we see. In terms of lettings, we'd mirror what Perry and Stephen are saying, that the demand is there, and I think the quality of the tenant is potentially better than it was post pre-lockdown. I think we're finding a better quality tenant than we were earlier in the year. So you've got more people moving around. I think the stamp duty holiday has perhaps helped a particular more affordable end of the market in London through till March. But when that comes to an end, it'll be interesting to see what sort of transaction volumes we see then after that period comes to an end. We could see that, as in the last stamp duty holiday, it was a mad rush to get everything through by the 31st of March. But after that, the 1st of April became very quiet, and you'd sort of lost out by that point. So I do wonder if we kick the can a little bit further down the line by introducing the stamp duty holiday when we have.
Okay. And I think that probably everybody's expectations is that as agents, that the market can be talked up, and there's a lot of kind of positivity around and stuff like that. Is it real, or is it kind of just a bit of fluff that's going to disappear? Are we going to turn around, as you kind of said, Chris, in sort of like April, May time next year, and find that house prices are falling and nobody's doing anything? So what people are buying now perhaps aren't going to be, they're going to have to wait 2-3 years before anything kind of comes up. Chris, what's your thoughts on that?
Well, in my opinion, I think you're looking at there will be a downturn. I think that there's a naturally concern from the mortgage market about the end of the furlough scheme, September, October time. We are already seeing that lenders are more cautious about their lending requirements already. So if we look at that and we do away with the stamp duty holiday that has come in, I think if that hadn't been introduced, I think market, even after that pent out frustration and that initial demand had been met, I think it would have pitted out quite quickly before Christmas. But I think with the stamp duty in place, I think we are looking at it running through till March, but I'm concerned that what April will look at the end of all of this, where you have the sort of double whammy of the end of furlough, potential Help to Buy schemes coming to an end as well. and also then more people unemployed than we're looking at the moment. So there is a natural concern there, and I think that's reflected in the mortgage company's position.
Interesting. So actually the mortgage companies are perhaps being more realistic than many of the kind of sellers and so on out there.
Absolutely.
And Perry, from your perspective, if I was a buyer, would you be telling me to go all in right now?
Well, what's interesting is that a good example, right? So to try and make it applicable to home movers or buyers who are watching this now. I had a text off a friend of mine looking to buy a house nowhere near where we operate, but she wanted my advice. She said, "Oh, it's on at 350. The agent said they had loads of interest. You know, what's happening with the market? I don't want to overpay, but I don't want to lose the house either. Like, I don't want to over offer, but I don't want to lose the house."
Yeah.
And I said to her, "Yeah, how we're seeing it where we are, the market is pretty crazy. Lots of inquiries, lots of interest." But I said, don't worry particularly about overpaying, because your bank most likely won't let you get to that point anyway. When you have your mortgage valuation carried out, if there's any, you know, we had a 15 grand down valuation, we've sold it at 250, down valued at 235. I think I had every comparable under the sun to back up the 250, but I'm finding it also depends on lenders potentially, and Chris might know more than this on me because I'm no expert on valuation and chartered surveyors rules and stuff, but I guess if you've got surveyors that are carrying out mortgage valuations for 5, 6, 7 lenders, those lenders' criteria is different. They'll all be very different, I guess, and that must filter down to the surveyors to have a more cautious hat on or a more positive hat on, and that's maybe what we're finding with different lenders.
Got it. So in terms of just your friend, so you were just kind of advising her to sort of go with whatever the valuation is going to be.
Same advice, whether it's on the phone or sit in the living room, you know,
yeah.
Will it drop in value? Possibly. Who knows? Might go up, might go down. Will it be available in 2 or 3 years' time? When that house be available in 2 or 3 years' time, when it's higher or lower in value? Probably not. If it's the right house for you and you've got a fairly secure job right now and you're going to be there for 5, 7, 10 years, then go for it. And you know, we do a lot on the buying agency side as well, and we would advise all clients to you know, find someone like Chris who carries out a proper, you know, lender valuation with their lender hat before they start negotiating.
Brilliant. And Steve, are you kind of seeing that people are being more cautious out there, or is it pretty much they just want to get the right house?
Yeah, look, I think in any market, if you find your perfect house, I think you've got to be a little bit sensible. You know, I find it bizarre, but I just had an offer on something at 855, and we told them 860 is a number, and they've taken 2 or 3 days to procrastinate, at which point they've lost it. And when you break it down to such a small amount, when you break it down into your monthly costs, I think sometimes people can overthink trying to, a home's for you to live in, a home's for you to enjoy. You know, sometimes an extra 50 quid or 25 quid if you can enjoy it. You know, I've always said to people, if you love the house, go for it. You know, if you're buying as an investment, it's a whole different story. But when you buy to live in, you know, it's different. And also you've got to remember that what may be 500 today, maybe 550 in a year, but what you're going to buy next at 8 might be 875. So it's all relative, and you know, it's important to get yourself on the market. And to be honest, once you're on the market, it's a little bit irrelevant what the market does, because you're winning and losing in the same way.
Got it. Brilliant, thank you. So I'm thinking about the sort of the process and how things have changed from a kind of COVID perspective. What's new, interesting? What are you finding is different? Have you had to change a load of your process and procedure, or is everything pretty much the same?
We changed a little bit, and a few people don't like it, where we've been a little bit more picky about who we're letting view properties.
Okay.
So if you're in a position where you're just not proceedable and you're just going out and you want to look at 7 properties because the sun's out and that's what you fancy doing, but you've got to, you know, we're saying no, you know, and most of our vendors are quite happy with that. You know, we're saying to people, go and look at our pictures, look at our floor plans. We're doing videos on everything now, and just trying to get people to take a bit more time before they just go and view anything for the sake of it. And I think, ironically, as estate agents, we're becoming better at doing our jobs and actually talking to people a lot more and actually asking those questions, which potentially Rightmove and Zoopla have stopped us asking. You know, as estate agents have almost become order takers. You want to see this? No problem. Well, in the nicest way, you don't need to be skilled to do that job. What you do need to be skilled is to have a conversation with someone, understand a little bit more what they're after. So I sort of found this has given us a bit more reason to actually prod and ask a few more questions. If we've got 8 people who want to view the same house and 2 people just aren't going to be in any position because they haven't even had theirs valued yet, we're saying to them, for the moment, we're not going to be showing you first.
Yeah. And that saves everybody's time, really, in the end, right?
Have you had any sort of negative context of that? Have you had people coming and saying, yeah, but so-and-so down the road just showed me, and there's 5 of us and we all want to look around, and then you're coming in and saying, no, that can't happen. How does that?
You get the people that moan, but, you've also got to protect your vendors first, and they're your clients. We've had people, we had someone the other day who, a buying agent came with clients, and we said to him, all right, that's lovely you bought them, but you're going to have to wait outside. We'll show them round. And he really didn't like it. And I said, look, we'll show you the property afterwards if you so want, but we're not having 8 people in the property, and people don't like it, but, people don't particularly like the idea of wearing masks, but, that's the rules, and that's what we're doing. And if people don't like it, so be it. We're not letting anyone into our high street offices at the moment without an appointment, because you just don't know what they've been up to or where they are. And most of them, we don't want to start doing logs. And most people understand it, but actually a lot of people get really annoyed. And, that's our issue, and that's our choice as agents, that we're doing what's safest for our staff and safest for our clients.
So what do you actually do? So somebody bangs on the door and you say, what? No, you can't come in.
We're not open to the public. We've got a big sign on the door saying, not open to the public. Please call us or make an appointment.
Wow. It sounded pretty busy behind you, Chris. Is that something that you think?
The high street doesn't get hundreds of people walking in anymore.
No.
We have a high street office because if we closed it, everyone would think we're in trouble. But the use of a high street office, we've got it, so we stay here, but it's no use to us.
Harry, are you in a high street office, or are you above your office where you are?
I'm in a cow shed.
You're in a cow shed.
So we're on a farm. We've been here. When I first opened my first office in Croydon in 2010, we had no shop. But we opened here we're in like a proper business centre back then, like a serviced office building.
Yeah.
But now we're literally on a farm. I think a few years back, farmers got grants to turn their pigsties into offices, and I'm sitting in one right now. And do you know what?
It's very nice.
Yeah. Have you got a pig? Are there pigs in there?
Yeah. The cow holding a cow.
But it's we haven't changed too much. So your original question, because we've already remote. Our agents will come in once or twice a week. An agent's job should be carried out in houses safely. But if they're in the office too much, they're probably not doing their job particularly well. They should be out advising clients and doing deals. And our office team are set up perfectly fine from home, which is why they're not here now. We probably won't come back. When we do come back, it'll be everyone in the office Monday, everyone in Friday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, work at home. And that's what they want. They'll have the option to work here every day, but no one's actually taken us up on that option. They've all just stayed at home working. And I prefer it because they're not wasting time driving around too much.
Yeah.
I think that's going to be it's quite a common thing that's going to happen. Certainly, as the furlough scheme ends, obviously people are going to consider whether their offices are worthwhile, especially if you're like Steve and you can't, people can't come in without an appointment. It does, beg the question, do you need to be paying for that office? I mean, different if you own it or whatever, but, there's still lots of expenses to pay when you could have something remote. Do you think that that's going to be something we're going to see more of?
It's definitely changing. The industry is definitely changing. The problem is, I know me and Perry I've got a core business, which is your very traditional high street, but we also run a self-employed model. And the reality is people can work from home. And furlough taught, over that lockdown, it taught us you don't need to be in your office 24/7. And sometimes being in an office, you've got so many distractions. You're answering the phone for someone else. You're dealing with Mrs. Jones, who wants to know where the post office is, which actually four doors down. There's so many distractions in an office. And I think there needs, like Perry has, he's got a base for his agents, which I think is really, really important, that they've got, when they need a bit of time to settle down and put their head down, they've got a home. But I don't think you need to be in the office 24/7 anymore. And I think what happened over lockdown has probably pushed our industry 2 years ahead of itself, of people realising they don't need that.
Okay. And I'm going to ring Chris in a sec, but Steve, does this mean that essentially you're going to close your office? Is that?
No, we need a base. And we've got now 4 bases. So 2 are on high streets, so 2 are in offices. And as long as my guys have got a space to work from, it doesn't matter if we're on a high street or not. We've been here for almost 17 years and the other office for 11. You know, it would be silly for us to move because we've got the space we need. And it would cost me the same to get this space in an office. But you don't need, if I went to open something else now, what I'm saying is you don't need to be on a high street. You don't need that presence. The problem is when you're on a high street, if you're not open 24/7, as in from your 9:30 till 6 o'clock, you can't just lock the door and shut. Someone walk past and go, oh, well, they're closed down. Whereas when you're where someone like Perry is, you could all go out, divert your phones, and no one really knows, and they don't need to know.
Only the cows would recognise it.
As you said, you know, an agent's job is in the house, not sitting in the office chit-chatting with each other.
Chris, do you have a problem with people sitting in the office chit-chatting? And have you stopped?
It's interesting. Perhaps my business is a lot older. You know, my firm was established back in the 1800s. So my firm's 120.
That sounds very old.
You're going to say you were there then.
Yeah, I'm a good looking 120-year-old.
Doing well.
But what you find is that when you have that kind of reputation for being in a particular location, you do get repeat business, and you do get business who notice that you're not open, you're not there. So for us, we found that as soon as we're able to, going back to a skeleton staff and the office being open was quite important to us, because we found that some of our customers were such that they expected us to be there and expected us to be open. So when Stephen was saying about having, you know, multiple offices and perhaps not being noticed in the same way as to whether you open or shut, for us it was a case that we had to have that presence back open and needed that straight away, so that the customers who we deal with day in, day out, whether it be lettings, property management, sales and so on, knew not only that we'd got through the lockdown period, but we were back open and providing that service. I think that was quite important for us, but that's a slightly different setup to Perry and Stephen.
I guess just linking it back to the consumer, so this doesn't become how to run a 2020 estate agency.
Yeah, that's the next question.
What's really important, I think, is for the consumers to understand that whether you've got a high street shop or you're based on the moon, like, you're available with video conferencing, Zoom links, WhatsApp video calls, more phone calls and in-person meetings. So we're cutting down. If it doesn't need a meeting, it doesn't get a meeting. Like, clearly we have to go into a house and have a look around it. But after that, a lot of my stuff's done over video call, WhatsApp video call, voice notes on WhatsApp, text message. There's just, cutting down. And on the viewing side, totally agree with Steve. I'm absolutely blown away by the people that are like just annoyed that we're trying to be safe for everyone's benefit. And it actually, Steve's probably a bit more laid back, because I just won't. I'm saying to them, look, let's just not view the house full stop, like, and go and find and deal with somebody else. I think the trouble with the country is it's split in it at the minute. You've got half still really worried about it and half think it's a load of nonsense. And
yes,
you know, which is, everyone's got their opinion. But as a business, Steve was saying, got to keep our clients and our team more than anything. We will accompany all viewings still, because we ensure that our clients get out the house. So that means that our team are at the front line. And I heard on the grapevine, you know, that there was somebody they had a client who was selling. She was totally fine, but then she got COVID, and there was viewings going on in their house. And buyers don't think about that when they're trying to get annoyed that they can't view a house. If I said, oh, but by the way, they had COVID last week, do you want to have a look at that still? I'm sure they would have soon said, no, thanks, I'm fine.
Yeah.
Did you have a problem with people wanting to view right in the middle of COVID?
Yeah.
Loads and loads of people who were just like, they thought I was mad when I was saying,
you're on Saturday, can't just slip in, you know. No, you can't just slip in. How about you slip off?
It's out. And listen, so thinking about, like you said, from the consumer perspective, looking at the sort of landlord and tenant side of things particularly, there was a lot of concern, wasn't there, early on about whether tenants were going to be able to afford the rent. There was the kind of holiday for the mortgage side, but then there was a non-eviction thing that's going to come to an end in the next sort of month or so. How would you deal with that sort of thing from a landlord's perspective? What's your kind of top tips for landlords right now who might be worried that come the next sort of, you know, month or two, that their tenants are going to start losing jobs, they're going to find themselves in a lot of difficulty, but they want to be good landlords, right? They don't necessarily want to take advantage of this, you know, the relaxing of that, the ability to be able to get rid of the tenants. What's your sort of advice around that, Chris?
I think from our point of view, we found that communication is key. I think talking to your clients, and I know that there's lots of electronic ways of doing that, but we found that actually picking up the phone and speaking to the client leads to a much more fluent understanding of what's going on with your particular tenants. There was a lot of sympathy from landlords regarding tenants who were key workers. I think they're, because of the efforts made by NHS and key workers during the lockdown period, we found that landlords were quite sympathetic to them and more willing perhaps to be generous in terms of writing off rent that would have fallen due or deferring rent that came due. So we have found with our clients that they have been willing to discuss those sort of options with tenants. I think that
there's someone crashing around behind you, Chris. Sorry, I can't hear a lot of what you're saying.
Sorry.
It sounds like somebody's digging a hole.
On a building site, yeah, like.
So what I was saying was that we had a lot of people a lot of our clients were willing to listen to the tenant's position, and particularly if they were key workers or they felt that they were doing their piece at the moment, they were quite happy to give allowances and give more freedoms to those tenants than potentially some of the others. But I thought that communication was key throughout, that the fact that you understood the tenant's position, were able to convey that to your client in a sensible way and then go back to your client with a sensible answer. Where I think the tenants fall down is sometimes they remain completely silent and they sort of suffer in silence a bit. And I think the earlier they can explain to their agents that there is an issue and then we can look to help. But if you don't say anything, then you do sort of fall into the category where we'll deal with you via the formal route, we'll serve possession proceedings, and we'll deal with it that way. I think the earlier you engage with your tenants, the better.
Got it. And Steve, would you say the same from the tenant's perspective? You know, if I'm worried about losing my job or I'm coming off furlough, and that's going to be a potential concern for me, you know, come the end of next month.
It's not just now. It's always been communication's a key. You know, I think everyone, the first few weeks of lockdown was petrified their tenants weren't going to pay the rent. And the tenants which phoned up and said, look, can we do something? Most landlords spoke to them, made plans with them. And I think moving forward, that will be the same situation. But I think most people who are going to be furloughed and lose their jobs have probably got a feeling like if you haven't been brought back from furlough now, you're probably going to start to worry when all your colleagues are. It's a little bit like being picked last for football. You know it's coming. So I think a lot of people, like we're getting a lot of people coming for jobs from not just the estate agency side, but our block management side, where companies are using this opportunity to downsize and just be aware and cut their businesses. So, you know, people are aware and they're looking for jobs before that problem happens. So, but I think it's really about the communication. You know, if you feel there's a problem going to be happening as a tenant, you need to speak to your landlord. And most landlords have been surprisingly sympathetic. They do understand. It's just when you go stealth on a landlord and go silent on a landlord, that's where the problem is. You know, most people understand that this isn't a usual situation.
Yeah,
I think the tenants as well do have to have, put a little bit of the onus on themselves in that if they do really think that they're going to get into trouble, it is fair to actually make that change and speak to somebody and think about going into something that's maybe less expensive or a bit further out. If you're not going to have to, live near a work position or something. I think that everybody needs to just use common sense and say, what is my situation going to be? Because it is going to change for a lot of people. But one door closes, another one opens. And I think that sometimes people will, find something different and better, and that's the way it's going to be. So just having...
There's been a lot of people who've also used this opportunity to look at their lifestyle and their careers, and do they need to be near a train station, if they're not going to be working in town anymore? Are they going to be working from home? So actually maybe I'll move a little bit further out, but I'll get a 2-bedroom where I can use one as a study. So there's been... as long as there's been negative, there's also been opportunities for the letting market as well.
Yeah,
I think there's been an awful lot of opportunity, and I think there's still a lot of opportunity that people aren't necessarily taking. Looking at your portfolio of your landlords that you're managing, and actually, discussing with them whether some of those properties maybe are not the right properties to have as rentals going forward, and maybe there should be something else because everybody's needs are changing, and so there's a lot more people that are looking for different things in their rental property than perhaps they would have done last year. So I think again that's you know, an agency with a big managed portfolio, I would be going through and assessing for my landlords what their portfolio is, and making sure that they've got the right property, or is there something better? Should they be doing something different with it? It's a great time to do that.
With the electric regs which have come in, which, you know, is just slapped in the middle of it all. You know, I think that's opened landlords' eyes, because there's very few landlords that's getting these certificates done and
Can you just expand on that a little bit, Steve? So what does that mean?
So now, before you move into property, you need to have an EICR certificate, which is electric regs. And the reality is, anything which isn't, you know, in the last 4 or 5 years, there's something wrong. Even if it's a way a plug was fused or something, I'm not seeing many properties have nothing to be done. You know, so
how many landlords have left it to the last minute, or how many agents have left?
Everyone's left it to the last minute. But then COVID also ruined that as well, because it was the 1st of July, and obviously people would start getting back into the swing of things. You know, so it sort of it's been like a double slap in the face for landlords.
That is probably the worst implemented legislation in history, I reckon. The timing.
That's a very crowded field of badly implemented regulation, but this is the worst, right?
And I think as well, just rewinding a little bit with talking about tenants and proactively communicating and managing if you might see yourself coming into a bit of a problem. Was the tenant ever late on their rent? It's just a yes or no answer for a reference. It doesn't say yes because of COVID or no because. So if you think you might not need a 2-bed anymore, or you can't afford a 2-bed, manage it proactively. Find a 1-bed, and it's likely the landlord and the tenant and the agent are going to release you from your tenancy early. There'll be a lot of tenants worrying that they've got another 8 months left on their tenancy, but their job's looking shaky. You're better off dealing with it now, speaking to the agent, and then actually most agents will say, great, no problem at all, we'll get that back on the market. As soon as a new tenant's found, you can be released and we'll help you with this. And so what Chris and Steve said, totally proactively manage it.
Just talk.
Yeah. Don't feel embarrassed. Because humans are
landlords would love you to tell them that you've got a problem and let you go walk away. Most landlords would let you walk away from your contract if you said you were having issues.
Yeah. We'll find a new tenant, no doubt, pretty quick anyway. So it's just about talking about it.
Brilliant. All right. Well, look, I'm mindful of time and really grateful for you, all of you guys getting together and just giving our consumers a lot of help. What would be your one piece of advice that you think the guys watching should go away with, Steve? What would you say that,
I think,
looking forward in the next sort of 2-3 months, what would you suggest?
I think the markets, there's a lot of people, a lot of property coming on the market. There's a lot of people looking. It's going to be a very busy, and it might go beyond March. But if you feel the time's right and you feel secure in your job, there's good properties to be bought out there, and you can't carry on waiting for the next thing and the next thing. If you're in that position that you want to get it done, just go and do it. There's nothing better in the world than owning your own home. And interest rates are low. You obviously, the stamp duty is massive. In London, our average house is 500 grand. It's £15,000 saving. It's when you put that into a 20% deposit, you can buy that extra little bit of what you want. So my advice to people is just get on with it and do it. This COVID might be in a situation that's around for years to come, not in this situation, but in a lesser. So sometimes you can wait forever, and sometimes you just got to get on with life.
Yeah, lovely. What do you think, Chris? Sorry, what's your advice?
I think I echo Stephen. I think if it's your forever home, then I think you're prepared to pay what it takes to get it. I think that we as humans, we don't always act with perfect knowledge. We are ultimately human. We make mistakes and so on. But if you're finding a family home for you and your family that you're delighted with, and it makes your heart sing, then why not go for it?
Nice one, Perry.
So totally echo all that, but I've got one little caveat. So humans act on emotion first and logic second, and I really think it's important that more so now that every buyer, I've banged down about this for the last 10 years, but every buyer should have an agent, just like a seller does. Ideally, your agent will be your selling agent and one helping you buy a house through Joe Blogg's estate agents. But just do some research into professional advice for property buyers when it comes to valuation, because most selling agents won't advise you to have a survey done out of the kind of book, straight out the block. So stuff like that is really important now. So I think you're going into a purchase with your eyes wide open, and good advice both on the long-term potential gain of the of the investment or the property, condition, all that kind of stuff.
I would agree with that. And also I would just say to people out there, just be very careful on your finances. Don't overstretch, you know, don't already, obviously the lenders are, you know, being more sensible, as in, you know, there's no sort of, you know, big deposit, small deposit options, but just to be careful, you know, don't try and stretch it as much as you can and, you know, and end up buying something that you then can't afford to have. So just, you know, be a bit more careful with your finances personally.
Cool. Well, listen, thanks, guys. Absolutely brilliant. Loved everything you've got to say out there.
Yeah, really.
Jane, across to you. So this is
just really just want to say that, you know, it's brilliant, and we do hope that people are getting the advice out there, but we are always here for questions. So if anybody's got any questions, they can just put them in the comments on Facebook, and we will make sure that the relevant person, if it's for anyone in particular, gets that and answers. But yeah, that's it really, and thank you for Carla for hosting and not being on screen, so she can get rid of us now, boot us off Facebook. Thank you very much, guys. Enjoy your in. Thank you.
Love it. Thanks again. Cheers.